How can cities and smaller municipalities build more resilience instead of only reacting and quickly responding to crises? We will hear two inputs focusing on the future agenda of cities from Rafał Trzaskowski, the mayor of the city of Warsaw and Committee of the Regions Rapporteur on the Climate Pact and board member of the European Covenant of Mayors. And a second video by Pablo Villegas from CEDIB, the Centro de Documentación e Informacion in Bolivia, a southern partner of Action Solidarité Tiers-Monde Luxembourg. Both have kindly sent video messages as they were unable to travel here. After the inputs, we will have a panel discussion with three colleagues from the EU, Energy, Cities and Climate Alliance, and hopefully questions and comments and discussions with you all. So without further ado, I believe we can show those two videos by Trzaskowski and Villegas.
Energy and geopolitical crises caused by the Russian aggression on Ukraine have made clear the urgency of accelerating the climate and energy transition. The Fit for 55 package and the Repower EU plan offer some of the fundamental answers we need to respond to the energy crisis. With Repower EU, Europe is working at an unprecedented speed to secure energy supply to its households and companies, while at the same time putting the deployment of renewables and higher energy efficiency at the heart of the EU's energy security plan. This focus on green and decentralized solutions is the only way to ensure energy, economic and social resilience and, of course, security. The Energy Union should empower citizens to produce, consume, store or trade their own renewable energy, either individually or collectively, to take energy-saving measures, to become active participants in the energy market through consumer choice, and to allow them the possibility of safely and confidently participating in demand response. In the Repower EU, we see positive steps in this direction, and we, local and regional authorities, will be the ones implementing these proposals on the ground. For instance, with regards to energy efficiency, cities manage an important part of the high energy consuming buildings and infrastructures. Cities are the ones implementing and promoting energy efficiency measures, while at the same time ensuring affordable, sustainable energy and fighting energy poverty. To fulfill the higher target for renewables deployment, locally produced renewable energies is necessary. For this, we need more support at the local and regional level to develop energy communities, power our public buildings with renewable energy sources, and to offer the transport, building and industrial sectors alternative energy sources that are secure, affordable and sustainable. With regards to fighting energy poverty, recent proposals to cap the revenues of inframarginal electricity producers with low cost of production and to introduce a solidarity contribution for fossil fuel companies are positive steps. However, we need to ensure that measures really reach the most vulnerable population groups and that funds are redirected towards effective energy and mobility poverty mitigation actions at the local level. On energy savings, the proposals recognize a leading role of the local and regional authorities in deploying energy saving measures suited to the local context. To further boost local energy saving efforts, last May the Convenant of Mayors, the Committee of the Regions and the European Commission jointly launched the Cities Energy Saving Sprint to encourage cities to take measures that will implement and reduce the energy consumption. While these proposals are welcome, local and regional governments should be better supported in developing solutions that take the diversity of regional and local circumstances into account, in order to ensure effective targeting and implementation of policy measures. To fully implement the many projects and initiatives included in our climate and energy plans, we need adequate human and mostly financial resources. Direct funding to cities to boost their capacity are needed. Initiatives like the mission on 100 climate neutral and smart cities are good examples of how EU funds can be directly channeled to cities in support of their climate and energy ambitions. Repower EU could be a great opportunity to enlarge these initiatives. In Warsaw, we believe that the answer to the evolving energy crisis is local governments increasing their activity in the field of production of clean and renewable energy. This can be achieved by taking advantage of municipal buildings' roofs, undeveloped spaces and brownfields to install solar panels, as well as converting waste and sewage sludge into biogas. Or last but not least, using new technologies such as big-scale heat pumps, hydrogen and energy storages. Sources of energy can fill not only local governments' demands, but also in the future can provide sustainable energy for residents, especially those affected by energy poverty. It means green and renewable electricity and heat at an affordable and stable price for everyone. Warsaw has started its adoption to current circumstances some time ago. We already have 120 buildings with photovoltaic panels and a large-scale photovoltaic farm developed by the municipal water supply and sewage company. We plan to add to that photovoltaics on another 200 buildings over the next 3 years. Along with measures to be implemented immediately, we put a lot of effort on strategic planning in the area of climate. This is primarily Warsaw Green City and Climate Action Plan that is currently at its final stage, which includes investments in renewable energy as well as the establishment of a renewable energy management center. It is all meant to support the city of Warsaw in meeting of our goals for fighting energy poverty and become carbon neutral no later than in 2050.
Il comune di Modena ha maturato un'esperienza di
internacional. Bueno, que el problema de la falta de energía llega a mi casa no quiere decir que solo exista en mi casa. Para el global es una vieja historia el que población que vive junto al pozo petrolero no tenga energía y lo mismo el país que lo exporta. Por ejemplo, ustedes saben cuánto vale el diésel en Yemen, es el más caro del mundo, Yemen es el país más pobre del mundo y está en una guerra. Y esto no es raro en esta historia, por ejemplo, antes de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, Paraguay y Bolivia se enfrentaron en una guerra y detrás de esto estaba la Shell y estaba el Estado. Villegas del CEDIB y es mi aporte a la Conferencia Anual de la Alianza Climática Internacional. Bueno, que el problema de la falta de energía llega a mi casa no quiere decir que solo existe en mi casa. Para el global es una vieja historia el que población que vive junto al pozo petrolero no tenga energía y lo mismo el país que lo exporta. Por ejemplo, ustedes saben cuánto vale el diésel en Yemen, es el más caro del mundo, Yemen es el país más pobre del mundo y está en una guerra. Y esto no es raro en esta historia, por ejemplo, antes de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, Paraguay y Bolivia se enfrentaron en una guerra y detrás de esto estaba la Shell y estaba el Standard Oil. Y el ejército boliviano era comandado por una misión alemana, una misión militar alemana, y estadounidenses y ingleses estaban conspirando, provocando golpes de Estado. Esa es la realidad. Ahora, lo de Yemen no lo digo para que ustedes se aguanten hasta llegar a esa situación. Lo digo para que entendamos qué es lo que está detrás. Por ejemplo, ustedes saben qué potencias están detrás de esta guerra entre Yemen y Arabia Saudita, y saben por qué los medios no hablan de eso. Entonces, de esta trágica historia, surgieron en los años 60 políticas de parte de los países pobres que lograron que las Naciones Unidas reconozcan los derechos de estos países sobre sus recursos naturales por encima de los intereses del capital transnacional. Pero como parte del proceso que llevó al neoliberalismo en los años 70, se impusieron tribunales internacionales, especialmente el CIADI del Banco Mundial, y se impuso la firma de tratados comerciales, de tratados de protección mutua de inversiones a los países pobres con los países ricos, como una especie de defensa de derechos humanos del capital transnacional. Y como efecto de esto, hasta el día de hoy nuestros países siguen pagando cuantiosas sumas por las multas que les imponen estos tribunales, o pagan cuantiosas sumas para no llegar a estos tribunales, sumas que podrían contribuir a nuestro desarrollo. El neoliberalismo ha sido los últimos 30 años, y no así solamente reformas económicas, sino que así 30 años de guerras por el petróleo, como la de Irak, con eso de las armas de destrucción masiva, que todos sabemos que fue una mentira, como sabemos que los mentirosos no tuvieron ningún castigo y siguen manejando este mundo. Con la destrucción de las guerras, de las fuentes de energía, y el bloqueo como de Irán y Venezuela, lograron obviamente que los precios se suban o que se mantengan altos. Y esta es una vieja estrategia del capital transnacional. Entonces, ahora, porque la energía es objeto de lucro, eso quiere decir que tiene que subir el consumo, tiene que subir el precio, tienen que caer los precios de los costos de producción, aunque dañen el medio ambiente y la población. Ahora, cuando ese es el marco, ¿las energías alternativas nos van a salvar? No, porque cuando caigan en manos del gran capital van a funcionar igual que el petróleo para obtener ganancia. Y en ese marco, por ejemplo, la batería de litio, aparte de dejarnos sin agua a las regiones productoras y sin democracia, como siempre hacen la minería para exportación, van a llevar energía hasta el último rincón del mundo para seguir destruyéndolo. Y además, al bosque, ¿qué le importa si la motosierra funciona con batería de litio o con gasolina? Entonces tenemos que ampliar nuestra visión. Por ejemplo, si vemos el mapa de concentración de carbono del mundo, Bolivia y Brasil están a la cabeza, porque sus bosques están ardiendo desde hace varios años, y ahí el problema no solo es petróleo, no es energía, es ganadería, es agroindustria, es deforestación para exportación. Y eso es Mercosur, y Mercosur es Brasil, los demás países son satélites. Y ustedes saben quién firmó el Tratado de Libre Comercio con Mercosur hace poco, y ustedes saben que no le dijo a Bolsonaro, si no apagas el fuego no firmo. Entonces, por eso tenemos que ampliar nuestra visión y ver todo el problema. Ahora, ¿cómo pueden las políticas de la UE fomentar un cambio estructural? Los primeros problemas no se pueden arreglar, como el cambio climático, si es que no hay un esfuerzo global, o sea, no se arregla si no hay paz. Entonces lo que hay que hacer es la paz y poner fin a estos 30 años de guerras que nos han llevado ante la posibilidad de una guerra mayor que pueden destruir a la humanidad. Entonces, cuando hay guerra, los que están en guerra se oyen a sí mismos, pero cuando se sientan a negociar, escuchan al otro. Escuchar al otro, directamente al otro, no lo que te dicen del otro, es clave para que haya paz. Y desde ese punto de vista yo me pregunto, ¿nosotros qué estamos haciendo eso? Gracias.
Thank you to Rafał and Pablo for sending their input via video. Yeah, I'm wondering if we can pull this forward a little bit so that the panel doesn't sit so far away from everybody else. We would like to reflect on the inputs that we just heard and do so in discussion with the three panelists as well as you all. And let's put this a little further in front. I would like to invite the three panelists to join me on stage. Eero Ailio from the EU Commission, Claire Roumet from Energy Cities, and Tine Heyse from the city of Ghent, as well as Climate Alliance President. Welcome. And if we could put that up a little. Then you just sit wherever you would like to be. Free seating. Thank you. Yeah, if we can get the screen up a little, then we don't feel so much behind the curtain here. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks. Great. Welcome on the panel. I would like to start with you, Tine, City of Ghent, Climate Alliance President, but maybe speaking mostly as a mayor of Ghent now. What are you experiencing right now in terms of energy security? What are the challenges that you're facing? And maybe you can give concrete examples of what you're facing, as well as maybe steps that you're taking to address the challenges.
Well, the challenges are very big. That's the least we can say. Is it working?
I don't think so. Do we need to switch it on?
Better? Yeah?
You got it? It is.
It is? Okay, okay. No?
Try again. Ah,
Yeah,
there you go.
okay.
Thanks.
So, the challenges are very big. I give you some figures, and I could give a list of figures. Last year, in 2021, we had about 7,000 households that we need to give support because they couldn't pay their energy bills. And so we have a population about 260,000 people. And what we see is that the amount of people who really need help with paying their energy bills tripled. just the last 3 months. And so the winter still has to come. So that just one figure, what the situation is. And I think we all can have lots of figures like that. But it's not only, of course, the people, it's also bakers who say we have to stop, basically. Or if the energy consumption and my energy bills are so big that if I want to sell bread and I really would ask the price of my bread, people wouldn't buy breads anymore. So the challenges are huge. The good thing, I would say, in some ways, it's always important not to waste a good crisis. Of course, the last thing you have to say that to people, because they will throw tomatoes at you. But you know what I mean, is that we had a lot of structures in place to help people, and to help people on short term and on longer term. Because, of course, you still need to see the long-term perspective. And, of course, the best way to help people with low energy bills is helping them with renovating their homes. And so we have a whole structure in place with a one-stop shop where people can have free advice on how to renovate their home. We have energy loans so that they, at the beginning, already have the financial means. We try to find contractors for them, so we do basically everything for them. Does it work perfectly? Of course not, but it really works. Of course, we also have things that work on short term, because even if we want to help people with renovating their homes, it will take a couple of months. And some people need help now. So we also have energy scans that are short-term solutions, but it's, of course, they're not structural, but helps as well. And fortunately, we just had a new program with help of the Flemish Institute, and it's a program for maintenance and adjustments of boilers, but only focused on vulnerable people. Legally, you have to maintain your boilers, but a lot of people don't do it because it costs, especially now, they save money. But if you do it, you can immediately have an energy consumption decrease of 15%. So we're speeding up all these kind of things. We have to accelerate everything. That's the thing. Of course, also as a city, we are weakened because of the corona crisis, because of the energy crisis. We had to save heaps of money, also in Ghent. Fortunately, I could protect the climate budget and the housing budget because everybody sees that we really need it, but still difficult. But anyhow, that are some examples. Also for firms, we speed up energy coaching for companies and so on, how the crisis is there, but that we try to help people, to help companies to survive the winter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Tine, for these concrete examples from your city. I'm just turning to Claire Roumet, Director of Energy Cities. You're talking to many cities. Is what Tine was describing just now, is that typical? How many of your members are in trouble? What kind of trouble are they in?
Yes, thank you. Well, no, Ghent is not typical. It's atypical, highly atypical, because it's much better prepared for decades of right climate policy planning. I mean, even if you don't have the means, you have at least everything in place, and you know what are the solutions, and most of the cities, they don't. Not because they don't have visions, most of them have visions, but they were never able to prepare so well. So the situation, unfortunately, when we have meetings currently with mayors from all across EU, is very difficult. Like we were together in Leuven 2 days ago. It's a small city out there. I mean, not small. It's a city next to Brussels. And what the mayor was telling me is that they had met with all the mayors in Flanders of the biggest city, and it's very scary. They are scared. They say it's cracking down. The entire society is cracking down. because of the very basic services that are unable to be supplied to the most of the population, not only to the energy poor, but to most of the population. So they are getting hit by like a tsunami of demands coming from the middle class, from local economy actors, from retailer, from shopkeepers, from absolutely everyone, and it's only the beginning. So this is in Belgium, but we have, like I was in Budapest also 2 weeks ago, sorry, and here in Budapest they already know that they cannot continue the kind of public services that they usually have. So they have already planned, and this is at national level, it's imposed but to all. They have planned to have to change the school holidays. So instead of 2 weeks at Christmas, they will have 5 weeks where the schools will be closed. And that's the way to save energy in schools. But obviously, it means that kids are at home. It doesn't mean that at home people have the heating system on. It just means that you need to find a solution for much more weeks. But it's not the only thing. They are closing theaters. In France, they are closing swimming pools. So it's the problem is that what we see is that we are hitting a wall that is not on electricity or gas supply, it's on electricity and gas prices, and this is something that is just it's just the beginning of the wave. And what we really witness is that there is a huge, massive difference in how this crisis is impacting every city in Europe. So basically, you can be lucky and be protected by some past energy mix decisions by your national governments like decades ago. This is the case of Spain or Portugal, that actually they have been very bad for years, but now they are much better placed than other countries. You can be in France, and if you are in France, you're just for the moment, you're basically you're blind to the crisis. I mean, you're not too blind, but you're a little bit blind from the crisis because some prices are capped, but it doesn't apply to all local authorities. Or you can be in Denmark, and in Denmark then what you have is that the past crisis has not been wasted, and then massively invest into local heating district infrastructure. And this is still there, and even if it was fueled by gas before, it's easier to switch and it's easier to find a solution to the current crisis. So this really depends on where you are, and what I see is that decades of cohesion policy at EU level can be scrapped in weeks. And that is because we are, in general, fossil dependent, and that is the basic. But I was quite struck by Pablo's words, because he was just also recalling, well, look, maybe you're a little bit astonished by the fact that you are hit, but actually petrol is feeding wars in the world for now more decades and decades, and he is also right. Obviously, we were quite blind to that, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Claire, also for giving that overview of what's going on in cities in different parts of Europe. I'd like to turn to Eero Ailio, Advisor for Energy Transition and Local Governance at the European Commission, DG Energy. Welcome, Eero. And I'd like to ask you about the effect that the current focus of European and national energy security policies has or will have on the role of local authorities to organize sustainable energy transformation. So how does that sit? How do these roles fit well? What local authorities should be doing in terms of energy transition, and now in terms of getting their people and their companies through the winter? How do you see that? Can you comment?
Thank you, Mima. I was thinking about this. First of all, the roles, how what's happening there. And at first, I got the feeling that, there is certainly a bit of a dilemma here, because there's much of this work on climate has been quite long-term, and it has to be this way so that you really get change. And then you're hit by actually a kind of a double whammy. First, the COVID, which starts to reduce your budgets, and then now the Putin's war. And again, the problems are, of course, in the fossil fuel, just like Claire mentioned. So we're having a fossil fuel price crisis here, not a renewable energy crisis. And it's interesting also, you mentioned about the wars and you know, the way oil has fueled the crisis around the world. So that's actually very true. And somebody smart just at another meeting said that, well, have you ever heard of a renewables war? And we said, not many. Although I could look in the Middle East and talk about water and, you know, maybe, but still not much less. So I think there's a clear connection between this kind of a choice of energy source and actually world peace. So it's quite a new thing. Anyway, so to your question, has the role really changed? So I would argue that in principle it has not changed. I mean, the cities are still the ones who are, you know, as we say, at least in European level, 70% of population and 70% pretty much of emissions, but also importantly, 70% of laws which are actually implemented at local and regional level. So that's where things start to happen. You go from paper to action. So that continues. And then if we look at the crisis situation again, so the energy transition, it's actually still the core of the policies, also of the European policies that we are putting forward. So that's the solution. Even when we have this dash for gas now, you know, frantically the member states and also EU actually negotiating new gas supplies around the world in order to just keep the houses warm. So still it's the transition which is behind there. And but of course in reality, I'm sure cities and regions, they have to make some hard choices. And that's a bit like what Tine was here saying. So, you know, we are climate aware people here. And unfortunately, actually, the majority of Europeans, according to surveys at least, think that climate solutions are super important. But those same people, yeah, they don't want to heat the planet, but they do want to heat their home. And there's the thing. And you don't have massive resources, a massive budget. So you might be in a situation that, look, am I going to continue funding that wind or solar park that's part of my long-term planning? Or actually, do I put that on hold, take the money, and launch a subsidy scheme to indeed serve these companies and citizens who need subsidies to survive? And then you are in front of another dilemma if you choose the subsidies. So these kinds of schemes, they tend to actually increase consumption, which means that the increase actually pushes on the price to go even higher. So these are the kind of dilemmas you can be faced with. Okay, there are ways to try to do it in a smart way. But maybe there's a third way, you know, if you do these kinds of things, so try to do at the same time, you know, launching a campaign, of course, on energy savings, that goes without saying. Energy efficiency, renovation was mentioned here, I fully agree. But then also these kinds of like low-cost insulation programs, for instance, which we know that they can be done very fast, they cost very little, but actually they have a bit of an impact to the, you know, the quality of life at home. And then one thing is demand response. So, you know, trying to switch your consumption from the peak hours to the other peak hours. And that's so important because now, before we change the pricing of electricity here, so it is this up and down, these peaks, when you're at the peak consumption. So that's when gas comes into the energy mix. And gas being the most expensive fuel, so that sets the price for all energy. And this is, that's why we always talk about shaving the peak. So putting them down. So use your washing machines and things at nighttime if you can, or, you know, these kinds of very practical things. And then another thing, choosing your energy contracts. I remember I used to work on this stuff earlier on, and a lot of people don't pay attention to them. Today, of course, a lot more than in the past. But people need advice on how to choose that kind of a contract that is less heavy on their wallet. And then maybe what concerns the city itself, budgeting. I think probably a lot of cities like Ghent, I'm sure you do it already, but in some places these activities like energy and health and others, they are in their own silos, and the budgets are not necessarily seen in the way that, you know, you do something on renovation, it actually reduces your healthcare costs because people just don't get sick that much. And that's a kind of thing. So I would really love to see at one point, you know, doctors, general practitioners prescribe renovation to people who have, you know, respiratory diseases or something like that. Now that would be a jump forward. And then maybe, okay, yeah, skilling of staff, we always talk about that. There are some programs which can support that also at the EU level, like the technical support instrument, for instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I open it to questions and comments from the audience, I would like to see if Tine, Claire, you'd like to respond, maybe also with a view to what does that mean for the longer term development of cities, the long-term resilience of cities?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to respond that actually I still feel that that quite often is said that, okay, is the cities where it's happening, and so we support the cities, but at the same time, I still have the feeling that a lot of other authorities don't know how it works at city level. And sometimes it still makes me angry, because I'm quite often invited, but there are people from the European Parliament, people from the European Commission, and then I'm there as a city because I can tell the reality. But then I think, yes, but some of the barriers we are facing already for so many years are still not solved. So, and indeed, Ghent might be better off than some cities, but even in Ghent, at a certain phase, even democracy is at stake, because people are so angry. And we had to save heaps and heaps and heaps of money, also in Ghent. And the identity poverty is so huge, also in Ghent. And I'm sure that in other cities it's worse. For example, we are asking already decades of years, please make sure that we have more technical people. Because, okay, we can give energy loans and we have good contractors, but there's a lack of contractors. So all those barriers, we know them for years, we tell them for years, and basically it's so slow. And I'm sometimes a bit angry that we could have been better, much better prepared for this kind of crisis if sometimes authorities listened earlier what's happening on the ground. And so that I also want to express that it, okay, okay, I want to be positive. At least I would say, here we are again, listen to us, what our problems are, listen what really helps us to speed up, to accelerate all those things, and please do it now. And do it not, yeah, so that's one thing. And yeah, your question, sorry?
I think you answered it in part about the long-term, how to build long-term resilience.
Yeah, it's basically about structure. The structures are important. It's about really democracy at all levels. And of course, democracy is not all about the people who are in the town hall. It's also about your civil communities. For example, the two crises, Corona and the energy crisis. If you, as a local level, don't know who your vulnerable people are, in crisis you can't reach them. If the crisis is there and think, oh, how can we reach the people? You never will be able to reach them. But if you have structures in place, if you have also a strong civil society who has volunteers, who go even at people's door to check if people are all right, if the children who could go to school because of Corona, who doesn't have computers, how to reach them. And the same for energy crisis. You can't solve it just when the crisis is there. So basically you need good, solid structures.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Tine. Claire, what about you? There's an applause, I think, for what Tine just said. Thank you. What about you? What was going through your mind when you were listening to Eero maybe, and what are your thoughts around what is needed to build that long-term resilient? Maybe also in terms of...
I think in general, the path that has been set by the European Commission is really the good path. I mean, there is a good knowledge about where we should go, how it's possible to reach it. So I think this is fine, and indeed the main big problem we have is to make sure that there is enough understanding in the member states to go into the same direction, and currently every member state is trying to go into a different direction. And but I also would like to echo what Tine just said. It's like the thing is, it's really a democratic crisis we are in, and this is really quite scary when you have the mayor of Paris, for example, that is just saying that she's addressed by thousands of people who don't believe that actually Putin is a bad person, and actually that maybe some others are the devils, because there is so many fake news and nobody understands anymore what's going on the energy market, and everything is said and everybody is an expert on energy, and so the confusion is massive and you don't know where to go. And actually also in München we have our member in München, they were telling us that the Stadtwerke in München, what they had to put in place is complete new training scheme for people that are the one that are receiving the customers, because customers are so angry that you basically need to train everyone in a Stadtwerke, so in public services. What you were doing before was trying to help people. Now what you need to do is protect yourself and be able to deal with violence. So it's really another world at local level that we are dealing with, and so if you, as a city, what you need to first think is about how can I cut every budget, because actually I don't have the money. Secondly, how can I protect the public service people from the violence, from the difficulties that they have to do their job, and burnout and so on and so on. So it's really another world. So this, I think there is not enough knowledge, and indeed there is a huge inertia of first member states. This is really shocking actually, because I think the European Commission did part of it, I mean the European level in general did part of its job to try to do what the geopolitical would require. However, we are still, what we need for the long term is to get out of the dichotomia. We have two parts in our brain. I mean, I'm not a neurologist, so I'm not speaking about the left and the right, but it's like one brain say, okay, we need to decrease our consumption and we basically cannot continue the way we are. And the other one is, well, yes, but VAT, fiscal measures, everything is linked to consumption. I only look at what the consumption, if I have a hole in my socks, I just go and buy another one. We have those two parts, and this we just need to stop consume, and every single policy is thought about consuming. It's like we need to be better energy consumers. No, we need to be to stop consume energy. So it's something that the long term will not manage to continue if we still have consumption at the heart of everything.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you. So this is a conversation not only about energy security, but about democracy, about violence, about protecting civil servants, and about question if the system is actually built in a way that it fits where we want to go. So I'm wondering what's going through your mind when you listen to this, Eero. Is that, would you say at the European level there's awareness about these connections or the lack of connections and the kind of crunch points in the system where it doesn't work?
So I guess I have to say that we have awareness. I couldn't say that we don't. I guess that's kind of clear. But I think that's an honest comment. So we do, and I think what Claire was saying here takes us to a discussion on taxation, and that's, that is part of the work that is happening in this Repower EU sort of package of actions, which was, which started after from the war, and we have colleagues indeed which are working on tax-related aspects, and that's always very difficult. So we don't call them tax. We talk about things like solidarity contribution, and
we know.
And there are some, yes, and it is about solidarity towards Ukraine and towards the less better off people. So I think that much is true. But there we're talking about, this is like in the context of when the fossil fuel companies, some of them are, cashing in enormously with the high price of fossil fuels. So as you will have heard certainly or read, so we have proposed now to take sort of cream part of those profits and give them to the member states so that they can use that to support people and companies in need. And then also the same kind of things, state aid rules have been relaxed and more is underway. So again, to keep companies from going bankrupt, like in the situation that Tine explained. So there we go. You go into that and you start working on the structure of the economy, which is built on consumption. And what you're saying is that we should look at more like energy sufficiency as a concept, which is a very, I think, a very smart concept, and we have to dive into that. So, yeah, and I think, again, well, I mean, there is I already mentioned the issue of awareness raising, how important that is. And I think for one reason, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the oil crisis of the 70s, or I was a little kid. But I think most of the people today do not. They don't have any experience of having a shortage of energy. It was always available. But now we need actually to change the mindset, start actually economizing, saving it. And there you need the right communication. And the penguins and the polar bears told us the very right thing. Talk about climate, talk about your quality of life and the kind of things which concern us. So that's much more powerful. And Leuven confirmed that the other day. So they said that when they did the switch in communication, all of a sudden, people were on board, the stakeholders. So it was stupid to talk about emissions. Nobody cares. Too far away. But when you start talking about clean air and healthy and safe bicycle paths, so all of a sudden people care. So that's that part. So then again, what kind of solution you can have? They've been mentioned here: renovation, energy efficiency. I talked about demand response already, and the cutting of the peaks. That's clear. The thing, what we might add to that package is the company and the business sector. So I heard once, I think that was in Oslo, very interesting ideas, or I mean things that had been done where the city hall agreed with the big employers who had people commuting from outside the city into the city. So they agreed to change the times of shifts, for instance, in factories, and reducing the rush hour, which is already good, again, for climate, but also reducing the energy peaks at the same time. So these are things which could be done on top of all these really short-term measures, like Heidelberg is preparing for heat shelters for people, which you have to do. I mean, it's like it's a clear thing. When you look at longer term, so I think, again, renewables are the solution and renovation is the solution, nothing new there. Maybe let's remember one little gadget, smart meter. I mean, some of us have those installed, others do not. But again, that gadget which measures electronically your consumption, if it's the right kind, like the Commission preaches, so then we can actually start building, again, automatic demand response programs into it that give a benefit to you or me when we change the consumption from 1 hour to another. That things, I mean, they exist already, but you have to go to Scandinavia, and that's too far. I think that has to go become a everyday thing. And then permitting, really, it's permits. I think one of the big problems, having a permit to put whatever, a solar panel on the roof or or what else? So this is a cumbersome process, and in a way, for good reasons, but we can't afford that. And that's also what, we as the Commission have put on the table. We shorten, simplify, and we put maximum, times for that. We just have to push it. And there, again, that's regional, local authorities have some competencies here, so you can influence that. So we have to have a different set of criteria in mind, because we need fast action. And then maybe just an idea. I remember I was traveling back in the north in Finland. I was talking to a farmer living on an island, remote, and he came and talked about how he's doing his energy transition. So he's doing this kind of, call it industrial symbiosis or farm symbiosis, where collects basically biomethane, I think it is, from the farm waste, and uses it to heat the buildings, but not only, purifies it and runs the vehicles with it. So that's something very interesting. And again, it works as long as the country doesn't put heavy taxes on that type of fuel.
Indeed.
But we should think about that. And it's a way of also connecting, big cities with the hinterland and getting the bioenergy from there. Thanks.
Thank you very much also for these concrete examples. But I'd like to see if there are questions or comments from the audience, online as well as here in the room. I think we have colleagues with microphones who would come to you. If you do have a question or a comment, say your name, where you're from, and tell us if you're asking a question to a particular panelist or the whole of the panel. Oh, well, yeah. Robert is our icebreaker. He's very reliable. Robert.
Thank you very much for the discussion. My name is Robert Lev, and I'm a councillor here in Hesse branch. Mr. Eero, Ailio, you were just talking about this farmer. And I remember well in Germany there was a time also farmers, they wanted to change from for their local use to get the tractors with biofuels. So what we saw is there was a change in the taxes and the way to do it. And it's nice today to talk, to say, okay, we must go forward, and the pressure is very high to get out of or to put down the vulnerability of our energy. But I think the most important is also to talk about the lessons we have to learn from the past in all these things. Who went on the wrong side? Yes, it was in a very different situation. We know that. But what are the lessons learned from the past, so that we don't repeat the same faults from wrong decisions on as well on Europe, mainly on European levels?
Thank you very much, Robert. If you immediately want to respond, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, just maybe quickly, I think it's a very good point, and it makes me think of one of these catchwords. We always talk about best practice sharing, between cities, best practices, good practices, yeah. But I think it's super important to share the bad practices. That's exactly the problems. Where did it go wrong? That type of things. And a little bit maybe linked to what you're giving as an example are these local energy communities or renewable energy communities. These were a concept that has spread in some countries, not in others. And 3-4 years ago, we put it actually into the legislation, EU legislation, that this has to be legal in every member state, because we found out that it was actually illegal in many places. We can say the same thing, even with solar panels. There were rules in place in many countries which made it practically impossible to install those things. And that is clearly a mistake. It's something that you cannot afford. And often these kinds of urbanistic rules sometimes are from another century when it comes to these type of solutions. So there we have to enter into that area, and we try a bit from the European level, but of course sometimes we don't have the knowledge of all these things. So it's important that these things come up, and then, you know, be through Climate Alliance or through whatever route they should come to us, so that we can think whether we can find a way of at least getting rid of them. But it's a very good point what you're making there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at Sarah, who is watching the chat, and she was nodding. There are questions from online participants. And then there's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, more comments. There's a lot of exasperation. How many sessions like this are needed? We keep repeating ourselves. Nothing's changing. We need to move faster, is what I'm hearing here. Then there's one person who said, as a city employee, he or she, I'm not sure who, finds that there's very few employees at the local level, at least in this particular city, and I think it's similar for many cities. Very few employees who are dedicated to climate action, and those that are there are just used as a fig leaf, as greenwashing. Like, without relevant laws, nothing's going to change at the municipal level. So how do we get around these political interests that are moving us in the wrong direction?
Okay, thank you. That's a breadth of issues and questions. You want to pick it up, Claire?
Yeah, I like that challenge of saying that indeed we are repeating ourselves. It's very true. But I think, however, that everything changed. And this is the thing, is that sometimes you have the impression that nothing has moved. I think sometimes I'm thinking that it's more than 20 years I'm saying that we should not continue to look at consumption only. But the only thing is that today it can be heard. Sometimes you need 2 decades of saying things before it can be heard. And now it is the time where it can be heard, because suddenly we have a very clear link in between our energy energy dependency and our lifestyle. So it's bakeries that are closing, it's massive supply shocks everywhere where we don't have anything. We don't have wood anymore, we don't have pellets anymore, we don't have anything anymore. We are currently freezing in our office. So all what we have said, we knew it, but however now it's a time where it becomes real, it's become reality, and then because we had the time to think about it, I think that we are really, this is also needed to know what is the solutions, because otherwise then you are just hit by the reality and it's despair. And this is really one point I would like to mention, is that there is a big threat on democracy because of despair. And the only thing we need to, not the only thing, but one thing we should really, really focus on and invest now is like give the people the means of their own transition. For example, I want to know how I can build myself a solar panel. I'm sure I can do that. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure that there is, I should go on internet, I will find it, I suppose, but I need to be able to own my own energy future. And that is education, that is access to knowledge and sharing it collectively.
Thank you, Claire. Don't waste a good crisis. Tine, you want to add?
Yeah, I totally agree. Because of course we are frustrated, and we could say we told you so many years, but it doesn't help. So at least use it. So also my climate administration, I say now is your time to prove that you make a difference for real people in the city. So focus really on that. So that helps. And now they listen. Now people listen. Of course, we have to keep it that they listen also in 3 years' time or whenever that the energy crisis might be better. But at least use it. Use the time that's there. And to be on the positive side, what we see is that some taboos are gone. And I think all cities have some taboos. In Ghent, for example, we were not allowed to talk about the ice skate Do we need it in the winter? And now it's gone. And I'm quite sure it's gone forever. So also we had discussions with shops because they still let their doors open in the winter. What's stupid, but they said yes, but if the neighbor shop is opening his door, and now they close it. So I think, so we has to use this, and that's a positive things that things that could not be said are now accepted.
Yeah. Thank you. If it's okay with you, there's one more question, I think. If it's a good closing question, maybe a short one?
Yeah, I think so. I'm actually building off of the two comments of the ladies, and because this question is to Eero. So you need to use the opportunity of crisis, to work on long-term resilience. But while not forgetting about the most vulnerable groups. But what we're seeing now on a nation-state level is that most measures taken are about energy affordability and not on energy sufficiency. So my question to Eero is, what is the role of the EU? What can they do and should do about this? Because we're hearing from a city level, this is what we're needing right at the moment.
I think that, yes, you have a point. That's the focus is on that, and I think the media as well, they concentrate on this immediate part now. And like I said in the beginning, that actually still the focus is on this clean energy transition. I mean, that's still our main policy, what we preach. And that line is supported when we talk to, of course, our national ministers and the parliamentarians. So they say yes, but they look at the short term, of course, now. So this is there, and that's one of the reasons that when we were publishing these measures, what can you do with taxation, with the support of the vulnerable consumers and all that. So at the same time, we set, a list of items that we want to push biogas or biomethane production. We want to push the renewables, for instance, the solar rooftop initiative, which is something that's kicked off. Also setting up this kind of an alliance in solar energy, where, by the way, indeed local regional authorities should be part of it, but also businesses. And there's the hydrogen ideas which are there. So using hydrogen where you cannot electrify, all these kinds of things are going at the same time. So that's, and the logic there is indeed that we start very quickly now using the crisis to get like a quick jump into the renewables, because we know that otherwise we won't get there. And then the very unsexy part, which is renovation. It's the most important thing, but usually it doesn't hit the headlines. People sort of, and politicians, yes, it's an important point, but it's quickly passed by and then people talk about something else. But we know that, there's not enough place in Europe, not enough physically place to install solar panels or put windmills and so on to replace fossil fuels. I mean, it's just physically and economically impossible. So you have to cut down and we have to change the behavior. We are wasting a lot of energy, which people don't even think about. We don't notice it. The boiler point was very good. Actually, the heating of water is huge consumption package. And there we can do things, like we can also turn down thermostat. And I think I have to stop now. I think I get the kind of answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eero. We are a little over time already. I would like to thank our panelists. Give them a hand. Thank you very much for joining this discussion. Thanks also to those who participated here in the room and to Sarah, who channeled the participation of our online audience. Thank you very much. A lot of questions remain, and we're basically in the middle of a crisis that these three panelists at least seem to agree should be used